Hey guys, Mr. Adams here. I just wanted to once again try to give you another intro video explaining the context of this new material, how it connects to what we've already learned, and just what are some of the basics that you might need to know. I'm also going to attach another video from the History Channel of another nerdy white guy who does a better job of explaining the basics than I could. So it'll be a little bit of a repeat, but I just wanted to go over a few things briefly. So if you remember back to when I was explaining how we were forming our brand new government, we felt that the government under the king was too strong. We didn't have enough rights or freedoms. And then we swung back like a pendulum to something that was too weak. And then we finally swung back to the middle and we found the government that was just right. If you remember the Goldilocks analogy of finding the way that worked, it was just right. When we wrote our Constitution, we decided to take all the initial power that the king used to have over us and rip it into three pieces. Think about ripping a king into three pieces. So that's where we got our purposeful three branches of government. We wanted to weaken it on purpose in order to give the people more power, people more strength, more representation. So the legislative branch represents the people and makes the laws. The executive branch carries out the laws or enforces them. It's not just the president, that's just one person in the executive branch. Judicial branch is our highest court. They judge the laws, they hear cases at the highest level. So over the next 2 weeks, we'll basically be briefly covering the basics of these three branches. So we'll start with the legislative branch. So that's what this intro video is about. The legislative branch is also referred to as the Congress, means the same thing. And when they say the Congress or the legislative branch, what they're referring to is the combination of the Senate and the House of Representatives. So, where these terms should hopefully be familiar to you is from way back on the lesson about our American Frankenstein and how we took all these inspirational ideas from the past and Frankenstein them together to come up with something that was brand new, something never been created before. It's like this freak monster. And if you remember, hopefully, the idea of pure democracy and everybody having a vote and having a say is what the Greeks were trying to do. But the Romans tried to do the same thing, but in ancient Rome, the Roman Empire was way too big. They had way too many people spread out all over the world. They needed people to represent other people and serve in the Senate so that you could have maybe one person represent 500 people or 5,000 people. So that's where our Congress comes from. Those two ideas mashed together. We have the Senate, which is the more elite branch. There's only 100 members. Doing your math at home, that's 2 per state. And they serve unlimited 6-year terms. Now, I just want to point out that that's actually a lot more time than you realize because presidents can only serve for 4 years at a time and then no more than 8 max. So president, even though it seems like they have so much control, it's actually for a very short amount of time because senators get elected for 6-year terms. And then imagine if you were a senator and then you're reelected again, that's 12 years. And then reelected again, that's 18 years. They can put together quite a long spectrum of influence and power in the government. So most of the people that typically sometimes run for president have already been senators for a while and proven that they have the expertise to govern not just a state, but also like work in government. The House is based more on local representation. Each representative is there to account for approximately 70,000 people. And that's just within each state. So some states have less than that. Some states have tremendously more than that. They are up for re-election really short, every 2 years. Bang, 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 bang. So the House of Reps is much more prone to turnover. There's 435 right now, and each of them representing their local districts. They have to work very hard for their local area. Otherwise, if you basically don't get done in 2 years what you said you were going to get done, you'll just be voted out. So then someone else can be voted in your place every 2 years. So together, doing your math at home, 535 people represent the Congress. And this is also just another good visual that I think might help to understand what I'm talking about that breakdown. The Senate as a whole, the 100 members, on the left side, if you see how each state is just a whole block color, like Democrats or like all Republican, or these purple ones are ones where it's split, where you might have both a Democratic senator as well as a Republican senator. I don't know what's going on here with Vermont. I know it's Bernie Sanders, and he's like technically super, super socialistic, maybe independent. I think that's what it might be. I think these green slashes might represent somebody who is like an independent. But anyway, the Senate deals with things that affect more the entire nation as a whole. So all 50 states equally. Whereas the House, all these different little spotches are meant to represent the different districts where 70,000 people approximately live. And so you can see all these hodgepodge, especially on the East Coast, how just puzzle piece we are. Each of these different little places represents another representative. And you can see, especially in places like here, if we could zoom in, on places like California, where you have big cities and it's just chock full of representatives. So New Jersey specifically, we're in this area and you can't even tell where we are because we're so cut up with all these old districts. New Jersey is a very, very small little state. So we have 2 senators, but we also have a lot of people. And so we have like 13, 14 state representatives just from the House alone, even though we're in a very small state. But as you can see, you have some places like Montana and Wyoming and North and South Dakota who also get their equal state representation of 2 senators each, but their population is so sparse. Sorry, I was waiting for my mouse to catch up. That they still only have 1 representative in each of these states. So it's meant to be fair. It's meant to balance things out. Just the last thing to wrap this up. The main thing that they do is turning bills into laws if they can. Their main job is to take these ideas either that they have or that their local citizens have, talk about them, debate them, make changes, keep voting on it until they have something they can all agree on, and then they pass it to the president. If he signs it, it becomes law. If he vetoes it and says no, sometimes, most of the time, that kills it. But sometimes if the Congress has enough of a majority, they can override the president's veto, which some of you might remember that little snippet from the checks and balances aspect of the Constitution that we were learning about right before coronavirus took us out of school. So this would have been in the news recently with these turning bills into laws because the recent emergency spending bills of both the $2 trillion and now more recently $500 billion that have been written by the Congress and approved, basically have been giving out the money for the stimulus checks, small business loans, as well as unemployment insurance, among other things. I have a nice little quote here. It says, "Writing laws is easy, but governing is difficult." And that's true. So normally, whether you're elected to the House of Representatives or the Senate, you are there to represent the people who elected you. So you are there to support their interests. That, like, if you are running on a campaign that says you are anti-gun, but then you go and vote on issues in the Congress that are pro-gun, people will see that and be like, excuse me, ma'am, excuse me, sir, what are you doing? You were elected by us people who are anti-gun, but we see that you publicly voted on things that are pro-gun. I don't think so. So the Congress is there to represent the people, to take their ideas and try to get them done, and if possible, turn some of these bills into laws that will then both either benefit their whole state, the entire nation, or more specifically on some smaller things, their local district, like Camden County and stuff like that. That's it. So hopefully this has been helpful to kind of just give you the basics, and I would suggest watching the other video as well. This should help you with context for the Congress in a Flash assignment.